Let's talk about something that's flowing inside of you right now, this very second, your blood. We call it the river of life for a reason. It's not just some red liquid, it's a super complex, living tissue, a bustling highway that keeps everything running. So let's take a deep dive into this incredible internal ocean and see what secrets it's hiding.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the basics, what blood even is. Then we're going to zoom way in on a single drop to see what it's made of. After that, we'll visit the amazing factory where it's all produced, learn how to read its unique ID card, and finally, look at how all this science plays out in the real world.
All right, first things first, what is blood? We usually think of tissues as solid things, right? Like muscle or bone. Well, blood just totally flips that idea on its head. It's actually a specialized connective tissue, but it's a fluid. It's the only tissue in our body that flows, connecting literally every part of us to every other part. And the sheer amount of it is pretty staggering. The average adult is walking around with about 5 liters of blood. That's more than a gallon, constantly on the move. It makes up roughly 8% of our total body weight, which is a huge amount when you stop and think about it. You could say blood is the ultimate multitasker, juggling 3 absolutely critical jobs. First, it's our body's courier service. It delivers oxygen and nutrients to our cells and then hauls away the trash, like carbon dioxide. Second, it's a master regulator, keeping our pH, temperature, and water balance perfectly dialed in. And third, it's our personal security force, with white blood cells and platelets ready to fight off invaders and patch up any leaks. So now let's put a single drop of that river under the microscope. What exactly are we going to find packed into that tiny little space? Well, to see all the different parts, scientists use a really cool process called centrifugation. Basically, they take a blood sample and spin it incredibly fast, like thousands of times a minute. And just like when you're on a fast ride at the fair, the force pushes all the heavier stuff to the bottom, neatly separating everything out by its density. And this is what you get, this really cool separation into 3 distinct layers. Up at the top, you have the yellowish liquid. That's the plasma. Down at the very bottom, you have the heavy red blood cells, which are also called erythrocytes. And then, see that super thin, pale layer in the middle? That's called the buffy coat. Now, what's really wild is when you look at the proportions. Over half of your blood, a full 55%, is just plasma, which is mostly water. The red blood cells make up almost all of the rest, at 45%. And that tiny little buffy coat, it's less than 1%, but it holds all of your white blood cells and platelets. Your entire immune system and clotting crew are in that tiny little sliver. Okay, so where do these billions upon billions of cells even come from? They don't last forever. They're constantly being replaced, manufactured in this incredible process called hematopoiesis. You can basically think of it as your body's own personal, high-tech blood cell factory. Now, I know this diagram looks a little complicated, but the main idea here is just amazing. This is the entire family tree of your blood. And every single one of these specialized cells, from the red cells that carry oxygen to the lymphocytes that fight infection, every single one starts out as this one master cell, the pluripotent stem cell. It's like the ultimate shapeshifter, just hanging out in our bone marrow, waiting for orders on what to become. But how does the factory know what to make? It's not random. It's a really sophisticated system of commands. For red blood cells, the main order comes from a hormone called erythropoietin, or EPO for short. Just think of EPO as the work order that gets sent from headquarters, your kidneys, straight to the factory floor in your bone marrow. And this just shows you the genius of that system. Our kidneys act like little oxygen sensors, constantly monitoring our blood. If they sense a dip in oxygen, maybe you go for a run or travel to a high-altitude city, they immediately release EPO. That EPO travels to the bone marrow with one simple message. Hey, we need more oxygen carriers, stat. The factory ramps up production of red cells, your oxygen levels go back to normal, and voila, it's a perfect, self-regulating loop. Of course, any factory needs raw materials to work with. To build healthy red blood cells, your body absolutely must have iron, because that's what makes the hemoglobin that carries the oxygen. It also needs vitamin B12 and folic acid. Both of those are crucial for making DNA as these new cells are rapidly dividing. If you're short on any of these, production can just grind to a halt. All right, let's switch gears. It turns out that every single red blood cell in your body carries a unique ID card on its surface. And these little molecular markers are what determine your blood type.
So to get this, we really just need to know two key terms. The antigen, that's the ID card itself, a molecule sitting on the surface of the cell. Then you have the antibody. Think of that like a security guard floating around in the plasma, and it's programmed to attack any foreign ID cards it doesn't recognize. And where do these ID cards come from? It's all in our genes. As you can see here, our DNA gives the instructions to enzymes that stick specific sugar molecules, the antigens, onto the outside of our red blood cells. It's kind of like a decorating process. Your genes might say, add the A decoration, or add the B decoration. Or if you have type O blood, the instructions just say, don't add anything at all. This is exactly how we do a blood test in the lab. See here? We take a blood sample and mix it with different antibody serums. If the security guards in the serum find the ID card they're programmed to look for, they latch on and it causes the cells to all clump together. That clumping is called agglutination. So if your blood clumps up when we add the anti-A antibodies, we know for sure you have type A blood. It's a really simple, visual way to get an answer. And understanding this is literally a matter of life and death when it comes to blood transfusions. Take a look at type O. Its cells have no A or B antigens on them, no ID cards for the recipient's immune system to get angry about. That's why we call it the universal donor. On the flip side, type AB blood has no security guard antibodies in its plasma, so it won't attack any donated blood. That makes them the universal recipient. Okay, now let's connect all of this to some really important real-world situations, from what happens during pregnancy all the way to professional sports. So besides the whole ABO thing, there's another really critical ID marker called the Rh factor. It's pretty simple. It's all about a D antigen. If you have it, you're Rh positive. If you don't, you're Rh negative. And as you can see from these diagrams, it follows classic dominant genetics. The gene for Rh positive is dominant, so you only need to get one copy of it from either parent to have a positive blood type. Now, this becomes super important during pregnancy. Here's the scenario. If an Rh negative mom is carrying an Rh positive baby, their blood can mix a little during childbirth. The mom's body sees the baby's Rh positive cells as foreign invaders and starts making antibodies against them. This doesn't hurt the first baby, but if she has a second pregnancy with another Rh positive baby, her antibodies can now cross the placenta and attack the fetus's red blood cells. It's a very dangerous condition called erythroblastosis fetalis. Remember that EPO hormone we talked about? The one that tells the bone marrow factory to make more red blood cells? Well, some athletes figured they could hack that system. By injecting synthetic EPO or even transfusing their own stored blood, they could artificially crank up their red blood cell count to boost their oxygen carrying capacity and endurance. But this practice, called blood doping, basically turns that river of life into a thick, dangerous sludge and can lead to things like high blood pressure, blood clots, and even heart failure. So we'll leave you with this last thought. Your body's red cell factory is an unbelievable machine. It churns out over 200 billion new cells every single day. But what happens when that super complex factory starts to break down or make mistakes? The results can be devastating, leading to things like anemia or blood cancers like leukemia. It's a powerful reminder of just how critical and how fragile this internal river really is.